Assalamualaikum, I'm Irmalida. This video for fulfill my final exam of for the course of popular literature. Okay, in popular literature, the the film that I analyzed was Nuremberg 2025. Okay, um, when we hear the word Nuremberg, most of us immediately think about the trial that changed international law after World War II. As someone who studies both English literature and law, I also expected this film to be about, like a legal principles and courtroom arguments. Surprisingly, I finished the film and then at and that film think about something completely different. I wasn't thinking about law anymore. I was thinking about people. That is why I titled my analysis "The Most Terrifying Person in the Room is Not a Monster." Nuremberg, directed by James Vanderbilt and adapted from the Nazi and the Psychiatrist by Jack Alhai, is a historical psychological drama produced by Walden Media and distributed by Sony Pictures Classics that revisit one of the most significant trials in modern history from an unusual perspective that rather than focus solely in the courtroom. The film follows U.S. Army Psychiatrist, the name is Douglas Kelley, as he interviews Hermann Göring before the Nuremberg trial. As the story unfolds through investigation, testimony, and confrontation, it explores not only the pursuit of justice, but also the complexities of like a guilt, responsibility, and the ways people justify their own actions. Although the trials eventually reach their verdicts, the film suggests that legal justice cannot completely resolve the moral consequence left behind by war. On that essay, I discussed a lot of things about the Nuremberg, use it narrative, characters, also cultural background, and social issue too. As a bonus, I put a cinematic technique to present the thought-provoking reflection on justice, power, and human nature. Okay. In this slide, we're talking about summary. I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scene captures. I divide this all is number one is for exposition, number two is for rising action, number three is the climax, number four it is falling action, and number five is resolution. In number one, you can see in here is Douglas Kelley arrivals, and he has assignment to evaluate Nazi prisoners. The commandant say you have to make sure that him, the second leader of the Nazi, safe during the trial. Who? Is it Hermann Göring? Surprising. Kelly is so very surprising about who will being interviewed, who will being evaluate, who will being take care in that in that that one in that in that prison. Okay, in here there's A1, there's number one already, it's exposition, and number two, this is the, you can see, like this, look at that, Kelly's face. This is the initial meeting between Kelly and Göring, and this is a psychological games begin to play out in the integration room. Well, you can see Kelly's initial interviews with Göring gradually become a battle of ideas and manipulation rather than routine psychiatrist evaluation. And after that, going to here, number three is a climax through psycho physical conflict. That film achieved its emotional peaks when the courtroom proceeding and interrogation scene reveals the contrast between legal accountability and Göring's refusal to accept moral responsibility. This is interesting. If you can see this one, the evidence come from the video, the record of the what happened in the camp. And then number four is the falling action. You can see this one is defendants in the first four. Is the defendants waiting for the verdicts, and then this one, the defendants get their own result. The verdicts out, and then the defendants have to facing their own consequence, to face the consequence of the legal process. Even here in number five, you can see the film conclusion, prompting reflection on justice and moral responsibility, even though they're already being executed, but the wound's still there. So, based by this, I analyze this movie using Freytag that explains effective plots develops through a clear dramatic structure, and Nuremberg follows this pattern while encouraging viewers to reflect on the meaning of justice rather than simply anticipating the final verdict. Okay, another slide. What would happen if you had to spend weeks interviewing one of history's most notorious criminals? Yes, Douglas Kelley in this position. He has to evaluate all of the Nazi leaders, more about 22, yeah. And leaders in here is there's two, Hayes and Göring, the second and the third person in Nazi's regime. In here, there's a two scene capture that I put in here. The first one, it's about the conversation between Göring and Hayes. That on that conversation, Kelley begins to realize that Göring is more psychologically complex than he expected during their early interview. So, in another one, you can see there's a close-up of Kelley's thoughtful expression after leaving the interrogation room, reflecting his own internal conflict. Douglas Kelley is presented as more than a psychiatrist assigned to evaluate Nazi prisoners. He becomes the audience window into the psychological complexity of the film. At the beginning, Kelley appears confident and professional, believing that his role is simply to determine whether the defendants are mentally fit and stand trial. However, As his conversation with Goring become more frequent, his emotional distance gradually begins to disappear. One scene that particularly caught my attention is when Kelly quietly observed Goring after one of their interviews. Rather than showing fear or anger, his expression reflects confusion and genuine curiosity, like suggesting that he is beginning to question how someone responsible for unimaginable crimes can appear so calm and convincing. Watching Kelly through the films, I felt that he changed not because his beliefs disappeared, but because his understanding of human nature become more complicated. As a Foster's explains that around characters develop through psychological complexity, and I believe Kelly's represent this idea because his journey shows that understanding evil is not the same as accepting it. Okay, now on the slide of Hermann Göring. Okay, this is probably my favorite part. Because what frightening me wasn't that Göring sought it, it was that he never needed to. Though. Mm, in here, there's four uh, scene capture that a scene that I captured. The first one is when first major interviewing between Douglas Kelley and Hermann Göring, showing Göring's calm and confidence and like a psychological dominant. And you can see in here another one. You can see the close up of Göring smiling while responding to Kelly's illustrating his ability to control the atmosphere despite being a prisoner. And this is interesting. How Göring is so very powerful, even though in the prison. When you can see this one is Rudolf Hess greets Göring with the Seychal, highlighting Göring's lingering symbolic authority among fellow defendants. And in here, nih, you can see it. Okay, Göring sitting in the courtroom during the proceeding. You can see that Göring is maintaining composure even while facing the trial. Look at the face. Um, Although Hermann Göring appeared in the film as a prisoners awaiting trial, he rarely seems powerless. Instead, he dominates almost every conversation through his confidence, intelligence, and ability to control the narrative. During his interviews with Kelly, Göring rarely raised his voice or showing the panic face. He speaks calmly, smiles at unexpected moment, and often responds in ways that make Kelly questioning not only Göring's motives but also his own assumption. Um, yeah, I've already told you that the last time about that the scene capture, there's a Rudolf Hayes still greet Göring with a say hail despite their imprisonment before later claiming to suffer from memory loss. Hayes is so very awkward. He always thought that his amnesia or his memory loss or something. That brief interaction suggests that authority does not disappear as quickly as political power. Uh, I have watching, I have watching, I ha, have I have watching Dawn Fall in 2004. I found this portrayal particularly interesting because I had only known Göring as one of Hitler's closest associates who eventually fell from power. I'm in control even after losing everything else that reminds me of Govan. government's idea that people continue to perform particular identities depending on the social situation. For me, Goring in here, Russell Crowe's performance is disturbing not because Goring behaves like a stereotypical villain, but also he remains remarkably composed and persuasive throughout the film. Okay, this slide is talking about the culture. You can see from here, uh, I put the scene capture. The first is defendant, the second is Judge Jackson. The film represents two cultures, a culture of obedience and a culture of accountability. Mm, Actually, one of the cultural aspect that stood out to me in the Nuremberg is a contrast between a culture of obedience and accountability. Um, Throughout the film, several Nazi defendants justify their action by claiming that they were simply following orders, reflecting a system in which loyalty to uh, authority was valued above a personal responsibility. In contrast, the Nuremberg trials introduced a different cultural perspective by emphasizing that individuals must be accountable for their own decision regardless of rank or position. This contrast is clearly visible in both of the courtroom proceeding and the interrogation scenes, where legal arguments are constantly challenged by moral question. Watching this moment made me realize that film is not only about judging past crimes, but also about showing how societies can redefine their values after experiencing violence and dictatorship. Okay, I put in here to the analysis of based by the expert. The whole in here argues that culture is reflected through the shared belief and meanings. So, in this perspective, Health explains why Nuremberg present justice, responsibility, and truth as cultural values rather than um, legal concepts. Okay, this was actually my favorite part too. Look at this slide. This slide. I'm mentioning about language and social issue. Mm, as an English literature student, I kept noticing how Goring carefully selected his word. Can you imagine? He rarely lied directly, like instead he reconstructed the reality. Um, this social issue left a strong impression of on me. Is the danger of silence and blind obedience. Throughout this film, several defendants defend themselves by claiming that they were only carrying out the orders for higher authority. Mm, while watching these scenes, I keep thinking about how ordinary people can become part of harmful system, not because they are cruel, but they choose not to questioning what they are asked to do. Okay, in here, um, we can see too, right? In this Nuremberg, you can if you watch the Nuremberg, you can see that Goring presents language as a way to shape the truth rather than simply communicate it. Many of defendants do not openly deny their crimes. Instead, they carefully choose words that justify or just save responsibility for their action. I noticed this especially during Goring's conversation with Kelly, where he constantly presents himself as a rational leader rather than a criminal. Watching this scene made me realize how language can become a powerful tool for shaping people understand of reality. Um, Fairclough. Fairclough argues too that language is closely connected with power and ideology, making this perspective relevant to Göring's attempt to reconstruct the truth through carefully chosen language. Although it was history, the manipulation of language remains highly relevant in today's society. Okay, beyond its story and character, I think Nuremberg becomes even stronger because of the way it used cinematic techniques. Before watching the film, I expected the courtroom scenes to leave the strongest impression on me. Surprisingly, the moments that stayed with me the longest were the quiet conversation inside Goring prison cells. The cold color palette, dim light, and confined setting create a feeling of isolation that reflect the emotional and moral weight carried by the characters. Frequent close-up shot allow viewers to notice subtle facial expression, making every pose, glance, and smile even psychologically significant. At the same time, the film's deliberate editing and restrained sound design give each conversation room to breathe instead of relying on dramatic action or loud musical cues. Finishing the film, I didn't immediately close the screen. Instead, I searched for what happened to Hermann Göring. Then I searched for Douglas Kelley. And I was shocked to discover that Kelley later died by cyanide, just like Göring. I also became curious about the children of former Nazi leaders. I had already watched it on 4 years ago, but somehow Nuremberg affected me much more deeply. It left me with more questions than answers. This, this is memorable. At first, I thought this film would uh, taught me about law. Instead, it taught me about language, power, responsibility, and human nature. I think that is why Nuremberg stayed with me long after the credits ended. Because as someone who studies both English literature and law, I saw that Nuremberg is proving that a memorable film does not end when the credits roll but continues through the conversation, reflection, and learning that follows. So that is the conclusion why I love to analyze this film. And thank you very much.